Okay, so it's all put together, the electronics are in. Now it's time to see how we make this kind of come to life. Okay, so it's been a few weeks, I think it's been nearly 2 weeks now since finished kind of getting all the electronics in, and I've been busy trying to make kind of everything work. So there's lots of new things in this build for me. I've never used the Crossfire setup before. The Tyrannus remote control is new to me as well, and so basically I'm kind of learning as I go with this. So I'll kind of talk you through what I've learned in this experience. So if you are building this with the same setup, then hopefully you can learn from both my mistakes and the troubleshooting that I've gone through. So one thing I will say is I've probably spent the last week trying to troubleshoot while the ailerons aren't working, so basically while the servos haven't been working, and it turned out that the TBS wing layer that I had and installed wasn't working properly. So I had a new one delivered. I've just quickly popped that in and it seems to be working. So I need to take it back out to properly finish off the board, desolder the pins, put the 90-degree pins on or something, and then I can kind of close everything down properly. But let me take you through what I've done, show you the configuration I've got so you can replicate that, and talk you through basically what I've learnt and the experiences so far. So like I said, I've already configured this up, so I can't show you it as I'm doing it. I can just talk you through what it's going to look like and what the experience is probably going to be like for you, so you can hopefully follow along easy enough if you're doing it for the first time. Okay, so to bring everyone kind of up to speed with what exact equipment we're using, so I have one of these Tyrannus 9XD pluses. Excuse the battery hanging out at the moment, I'm just working on something. The Crossfire micro transmitter, that's a JR connection, so it fits in any controller that has a JR module, or you might have the non-micro version. The process is going to be exactly the same. In the wing we are running the Crossfire Micro V2 that is connected through to the TBS FP Vision, and we're not using a flight controller, we are using the wing layer, which is basically just giving us full manual control of throttle and everything. So the first thing you want to do is load up on your computer the Team Black Sheep app, and then you want to update your firmware on the transmitter. You don't do this on the receiver. The transmitter does the syncing to that once you've completed binding. So once that is done, we're going to do a few things, and so I'll move the camera so you guys can see the remote as we do it. Okay, so one of the first things you're going to want to do is you want to power up the wing itself. So then you'll see that the Crossfire Micro RXV2 has a red light on it. Many people mistakenly apply power to this whilst holding down the bind button. You don't want to do that. So turn it on, the light will be red. Press that bind button once and it will begin blinking green. And the back of this, obviously it's green right now because we are bound, but from memory I think it flashes or pulses like a yellow colour. If you are creating the model for the first time on the Tyrannus, there's lots of videos on this, so I won't go through everything, just the things that are relevant to this. If we go down and just see things in here. It's in a different area. Okay. Bear with me a second. So it's on the second page. You also want to make sure you're running the latest version of Open TX on this controller so that you can get access to the crossfire menu. Now this controller has a built-in transmitter, and you want to disable that and enable the external one. So I think you can see on here on the screen, internal RF, we turn that to off, and the external RF, you're going to turn that to on and set that to CRSF, and that's when the crossfire function is enabled. So you're doing that for this new model that you've set up. And then what you need to do is press and hold the menu button and let go. Press page once, and this will then basically bring you to the SD card which is installed in the TriNet by default, and you're going to execute this crossfire menu. So it's already selected, just press enter on that. Scroll down until you get to the crossfire Lua script. Press and hold the enter button, and we're going to execute that. Now obviously my stuff's already connected, but the first time you do this, all you're going to have is your crossfire micro TX or your crossfire TX, depending on what you've opted for. Simply press on that, move down to this binding setting, press the binding button, and it's going to go through that binding process. And basically it doesn't take too long, about a minute. Once it's bound, it will copy the firmware and all the settings across, and then once you've done that, you will then have access and you have to see your receiver. So as you can see here, I have the Crossfire Micro RX. Also, because that FP Vision also has the TVS Core Pro installed, I have access to that as well. Now, with this wing layer, you want to have the servo wires connected in the fashion we spoke about before. Just as a reminder, I don't know if it's going to be possible to see because it's a bit dark, but servo 1 has the ESC throttle cable connected, and then cables 2 and 3, so 1, 2 and 3 of the servo cables are connected, and you can see we've got that empty one on the end. Number 4 hasn't got anything connected. Now with this particular configuration, because with that FP Vision you have the ability to control the menu screen for the on-screen display on this as well. So the first 4 channels we're actually just going to use for doing the on-screen display, but so this will make more sense. So we're going to go down to the Micro RX option, click on that, it will pull all the information across. So I have it set for 8 channel, and as we slowly move down, don't worry too much about all these things. Obviously you want telemetry on, we don't need to force anything. I've changed my failsafe mode to cut, so basically in the event that radio signal is lost, it will cut throttle and basically just drop the thing out of the sky. This RC by Mavlink, I don't think I need to have that on, but I don't know a load about it, so I just kind of left it as default, so everything seems to work okay. The bit that's important for you with this wing layer setup is you may find that by default this is set to ppm, and basically we're just going to need to do a PWM configuration. So basically output 1 goes to channel 1, output 2 goes to channel 5, output 3 goes to channel 6, and output 4 goes to channel 4. Now the reason for this kind of weird 5 and 6 option is because I remember I said a moment ago, channels 1 to 4 are going to be using and controlling the on-screen display. So we want to have that capability, so we have to keep on messing around with that button on top of the FP Vision all the time. Everything else is just exactly the same. So nothing to worry or do out there. Once that's all done, you can exit that. I've also, I don't know if you can see it from here, let me just check. We have an error, of course we do. Enough memory, Captain. Okay, and so this is just an example of what I can see through the Core Pro. I can see the video transmitter currently set at 800 megawatts. And these are all the things that you can set up on this. Anyway, so once that's done, you can exit out of all of that and you should be good to go. Now we'll look at the configuration for this device. So we want to move all the way along to here. Right, so I have this basically set up in the standard configuration, so throttle, aileron, and rudder. As you can see on these two, so the aileron and the aileron, let's go to edit. You see I've set expo to 50, and this is basically to help control, to make sure that the servos aren't trying to rip the ailerons out of the model, so it just kind of restricts the motion a little bit. So you want to decide how much you want to configure that yourself. That's my kind of recommendation. And now here's the kind of interesting part. So as we mentioned before, channels 1 to 4, you want to configure that in a standard throttle, aileron, and rudder configuration, and you're going to be using this to again, control the on-screen display options. But then we need to do the funky stuff. So basically, on channel 5, you need to set up a mix. So you want to set a 50% mix for aileron and a 50% mix for aileron. And as you can see on mine, I've got both of these set to -50. That may or may not be the same for your setup. You basically just have to work that out as you kind of do some testing with the model, which I'll talk about in a moment. But a little sneaky shortcut for that is you're going to have to basically have this as +50 or -50. And when you do that, if you press enter, if you press and hold the plus and minus buttons at the same time, it just does a switch from plus to minus. It saves you kind of pressing the button 100 times to move from one to the other. Okay, now obviously the reason that we're doing this is to make sure that that the ailerons are moving in the right orientation when they're moving up and down and left and right. So depending on how familiar you are, obviously now I'm using mode 2. So for me, on the right hand stick, when I push up, I want the ailerons to move down. When I pull down, I want them to move up. When I push to the left one should come up and the right one should go down. And when I push right, the left one should go down and the right one should go up. So that's basically how you're going to test this. And if it doesn't behave in the way that you're expecting, then basically you're going to be changing this from plus to +50 to get the things to operate in the way that it's expected. You'll also see here I have channel 7. I've configured that to be a buzzer. So this is just this button up here. So it's like the lost model buzzer. So you'll see if I push that forwards, the model just starts beeping. And that's obviously if I lose the model, it goes down somewhere. Then I can find it easy enough. So let's just take a quick look at the model itself so we can see what those ailerons are doing as I'm pushing up and down on these sticks. So let's just see if I can do this all with one hand. Okay, so hopefully we can just about see both of these in the picture and just about get that in as well. So when I push up, we can see that they're moving down. When I pull back, they go up. And when I go left and right, they're doing the opposite. So these things do make a little bit of noise because they are digital servos, so that's all normal. As I mentioned before, when you're moving these, you want to be able to restrict the travel, right? So you don't want the horn smacking right into the side. So setting the expo, that is what helps with this. And obviously, I haven't got the prop on yet, but the throttle does what it's expected to do. Now, one of the other great things, one of the reasons I like this Taranis is that if you press and hold the page button, you can get a wealth of information that you can figure from the telemetry information. So here, if we're outside, this would be showing my GPS coordinates. Then we have the current battery level of the wing itself, how many satellites it's connected to, what altitude it thinks it is, and the RSSI. So right now it's obviously at 100 because it's right next to each other. So to configure those things is in here, I think. Let me just double check. Okay, so it's in the model itself. So you press menu once. Then we press and hold page, and we go all the way back to the 14th page. And we're going to go to page 13, I think it is. Yep, here we are. So if we go down, we can see this is the telemetry screen. Bit of reflection off that light there. This is the telemetry screen, and if we move down slowly, these are all the sensors that it is picking up from that crossfire. Now, as standard, you won't have all that, so what you need to do is select that, discover new sensors, and it will basically populate with all this information. And then basically you have the option of configuring your own screens to display any of this information. So capacity, voltage, RSSI, number of satellites, altitude, all this sort of stuff. And basically then what you do is on the last page, the display page, you can set up multiple screens to display the information in the way that you want it to. So I've gone from a numerical layout, and obviously, like I said before, I've just got GPS, receiver battery, all this sort of stuff. So it works really well, and like I said, that's pretty much kind of how you set this up and get it working. So I hope that's helpful and it kind of makes some sense. Now, I've never built a wing before, right? And I've never used this Taranis before, so I used to use this Turner G9XR, but I got this Taranis partially because I knew I was going to do this wing build, because if this thing goes down, it's going to be really handy to have the GPS coordinates on the screen as well as on my goggles. So one of the other things, which this camera stopped moving around so much. So one of the other things that you are going to have to do is, as you're going through this process and setting all this up, at some point you're going to put your goggles on and you're going to see it's in RC calibration mode. So get all this stuff set up on the controller first, then go through the calibration process. If that hasn't happened automatically, you've got basically the one option to press that and hold the button for like 5 seconds on the FP Vision, and then single click down to RC Calibration Wizard, press and hold, and then it will bring you into that configuration screen. Then basically, if you're flying mode 2 like I am, it's going to ask you to fully throttle up. So the left hand stick, you want to move fully to the top. It will tell you to hold it there for a few seconds. Then it'll tell you to move it all the way down to the bottom. You do that. Then it's going to ask you to do pitch and roll. So you figure out on the right hand stick. Then you need to have that channel 4 set up for the rudder. Even though you don't have a rudder on a wing, you still need to have that configured to be able to complete the configuration wizard. And then once you go through that, then you're basically all done. So then everything should work as we just discussed. You should be able to hold the left stick down to the left, and after 3 or 4 seconds it will go into the on-screen display wizard, so you can do some more calibration all from the sticks. It works really well. It's pretty intuitive. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So to me, that kind of is, as I'm talking about, it seems kind of obvious, but I struggled with some of this going through. So I think for part 3, I think it's kind of helpful to show you what it is that I've got going on. And the next step, which I don't know if it'd be worth videoing or not, I'll just kind of show you a little bit of it now. The next step is really just get the center of gravity sorted for this wing. So I've got a 4S battery that I use on my TBS Discovery that I'm going to use in here. It's about 460 grams, I think. And the general consensus seems to be that you need about 600 grams of weight in the battery bay. So I'm going to have to work out how accurate that is. It's one of the most important things of the wings, from what I gather, is that the center of gravity is right. So, I just picked this up, I forgot to point it out. So under here, there's this little dot here near my thumb, and there's another one over here on the other side. It's kind of hard to see, just about there, just so you can see what it looks like. And those are the center of gravity points. And so basically that's what needs to happen. So when the battery is in there, we want a slight bit of weight on the front, so it's better for it to be nose heavy. Make sure you've got the GoPro in there, I think, because all these things are kind of factored in for the weight. And you want to have a little bit of nose heaviness, so it's not flipping back on itself and flipping upside down and simply crashing. It's going to do a nosedive instead, basically. Once you've got that done, then the next part of my video will hopefully be the Maiden Flight. And my plan is to go somewhere that's got high grass, so when I throw this for the first time, it's going to crash multiple times, I'm sure, that I can crash softly. And my plan is to just kind of throw it and yeah, let it glide and see what happens. And then once I'm more confident, then start the motor up and see what happens. So this might be the last time we see it all in one piece, as it were. Next time it might all be completely smashed up. So I hope not. I'm confident that we can go through this process and work everything out. I'm going to save. You've got these 2 last pieces that I'm not going to set up just yet. I got a TBS diamond antenna, which we'll show in a future video. I just don't want to wreck everything on my first go. And this TBS Crossfire Immortal antenna. So these are basically just upgraded antennas for this Crossfire setup, one for the wing and one on the transmitter. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything. I hope this stuff's been helpful. I have got another wing layer coming, because I ordered one from Hong Kong because the UK supplier hasn't had any in for ages. And literally the same day I ordered it from Hong Kong, it came in stock in the UK, which enabled me to sort this out quicker. So the one from Hong Kong will still be arriving. I need to decide if I'm going to redo the soldering before I try the initial flight or not. I have used a craft knife to cut out the inside of this module, so it does fit and close just about. It's not mega neat though. I'm just trying to show you guys. So it does close and protect everything, just about. But as you can see, there is a bit of a hump in here, but I think it'll be enough for that test glide. So if you had the same problems with this, or perhaps it's just me being a complete noob with this kind of setup, that shouldn't have taken me as long as it did, but hopefully this helps someone. Yeah, I think, the only other thing that I did was I put some Gorilla Glue into the antenna mount here, so that should hold the antenna a bit more firmly in there. So that's it. Next time should be Maiden Flight. I'm either going to be happy and exhilarated because it's flying in the air, or really, really grumpy because all this money is just going to get smashed to smithereens. But you don't learn new things about trying. Okay, so I thought I would just finish this video with trying to work out this centre of gravity stuff. So I'll just show you what I've got going on right now. So in here, I've got 100 grams of solder all raveled up. There's an Allen key in there. There's another Allen key under here and a big Allen key on top of here. So it all just about squeezes in. Get this closed up, and that pretty much gives us the center of gravity that we're looking for. So let me just put the camera down so I can show you guys what that looks like. So we find the two points on the bottom here. I just rest it here. That's pretty much perfect. You can see a slight tipping towards the front, but definitely not tipping backwards. So that's good. I'll weigh those components so I can just understand what kind of weight is involved there, and then I can work out if there's some better way of providing that ballast that I need. So perhaps it's some lead weights, or fishing weights, or wheel weights, or something. I think it's probably about, I don't know, 150 grams or something is going to be my guess. So we'll see as it overlay now how close I was. But yeah, so I guess we're ready to give it a throw and see what happens. Thanks for watching this video. A thumbs up would be really appreciated. If you're interested in other geek type videos, please consider subscribing to Spectrum Geeks. Why not also follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And before you leave, why don't you check out one of these other videos that may be of interest. Thanks again for watching.